Frank Bellamy gives millions of people all over Britain a brief dose of escapism over the cornflakes or perhaps on the way to work. It's his pen that creates the daily adventures of that durable veteran cartoon Superman Garth, hero of 1,000 adventures in the Daily Mirror. Chris Young visited Frank and Garth at their home in Kettering.
For nearly 5 years, Frank Bellamy has lived every one of Garth's extraordinary adventures in his studio, first in his house in Surrey, and now at his new home, a bungalow at Geddington near Kettering. The monsters and other baddies that Garth has done battle with, and of course beaten, were created solely by him before being committed to paper for the regular enjoyment of the Daily Mirror's several million readers. The strip is also syndicated and is actually seen in many countries throughout the world. Frank Bellamy's first published works were cartoons of local footballers in the Kettering Evening Telegraph. Just after the war, he moved to Fleet Street, working in an advertising studio, and in 1953 went freelance when he was offered the first comic strip of his very own in Mickey Mouse Weekly. Later, he spent 8 years on the Eagle comic, during which time he helped draw the almost legendary figure of Dan Dare. By himself, on the same comic, he illustrated the entire Field Marshal Montgomery and Sir Winston Churchill stories. He's also done regular work for the Sunday Times and the Radio Times, and 3 years ago was judged the best foreign artist by the American Academy of Comic Book Artists. But Frank, all his career, had dreamt of drawing Garth, a story which first appeared more than 30 years ago. Now, work on the strip is a full-time job, as it appears 6 days a week. Now, looking closely at this original Garth drawing, Frank, how difficult is it to get action into such a small space?
Well, it's very difficult because it is, as you can see, quite a small space. That's why it's chopped up the bottom here. The point here and here, for example, is to show violent action, someone being shot instead of sagging down there and gracefully die, being shot out of the picture, you see. That's why I have this little composition is forward from that, I hope. The same here is two being shot. This is violence in a Western, once again illustrating the how Garth can be a detective one minute, he can be a sheriff, as he is as a marshal, actually, the next minute in this.
OK, well, let's move on, because you don't only do Garth. In the past, you've done all sorts of other things, haven't you?
Yes, this
is what,
Thunderbirds. And this is a development of mine to stop from the usual treatment of a strip, which was picture after picture after picture, to give a composition to a complete double-page spread, including one frame, which is right the way across. This is showing the entrance to the Atlantic Tunnel. There's an aircraft taking off here, the airfield and what.
And this is all your imagination?
This is purely and simply imagination, and as I was saying before, getting involved, feeling mentally about it, and that's what I'm sure makes me draw pictures in that way.
Take a long time to draw that.
It would, but this is a case of having to draw one of these every week, regularly.
All right, well, let's look at the next one. Now we're getting a bit more serious, aren't we?
Because yes, this is to show heart attacks and treatment, non-photographically, purely pictorial journalism, and showing what happens during a heart attack. It's rather a quick jump from comics. But it's exactly the same treatment, same approach on the Thunderbirds, Garth, or this.
And that was in the Sunday Times?
This was in the Sunday Times colour supplement, yes.
All right. And beneath that?
In other words, they accept the comic strip medium.
Even in a serious newspaper?
No. And this one is pre the first moon landing. I must tell you, it's the first strip that I've ever drawn, minus balloons. It would have been lovely to say I made it, but it is the first time drawing a strip minus balloons, and in this case, for real, because after drawing for years, science fiction, it seemed funny to draw it naturally happening.
But that was done before the moon landing?
This was drawn before the actual moon landing.
And were you fairly accurate?
All the way through, I understand, yes.
It all came true?
Yes.
The talent of one of Britain's top illustrators, Frank Bellamy.